Hi everyone, welcome to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in with us on this Thursday. I'd like to welcome on my guest, George Smart, otherwise known as the Accidental Archivist, will be the keynote speaker at the 35th Rhode Island Historical Preservation Conference coming up this April. George, very excited to have you on here, and as folks who are watching now can see, you have quite the interesting background behind you. So let's just introduce you, your expertise, and what exactly are we looking at?
So we're looking at a very famous building in Brussels, Belgium. It's called the Atomium, and it looks like a giant molecule, really. It's, I think, about 300 feet tall, and it's connected by these different tubes. It was built for the 1958 World's Fair. It's one of the most fascinating modernist buildings. And when I was there, I took a photo down the escalator tube.
So tell us a little bit. The upcoming conferences Come Back to the Future, focus on modernism. For folks not in the architectural realm, George, can you define modernism for us, please?
Well, I should let people know I'm not in the architectural realm either. I kind of stumbled into this. My wife refers to this entire project as a 14-year seizure. So I'm a mere mortal like everybody else. I just happen to love modernism. And it defines really a style of architecture that was very forward-thinking, forward-looking, very optimistic, hopeful about the future, that started in various places around the world in the 30s, more or less, and then boomed after World War II, as people were looking to rebuild and create the great future with flying cars and X-ray specs and all those things we saw in comic books.
So talk with us a little bit about what we can expect to hear from you in your keynote address for this conference as the Accidental Archivist. And tell us a little bit, we're going to probably want to go into your work with U.S. modernism.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about the history of modernist design in the United States, particularly in houses, because that's the thing people relate most to. We don't tend to wake up early in the morning and go, gee, I want to have my own hospital. It's a house. That's what we think about, and how we're going to furnish it and what it's going to look like and what we're going to see through the windows, all of that. So I'll share the story about modernism, and then I'll talk about how our nonprofit organization grew from a really late night Google search in 2007 to now we're the largest nonprofit archive in the world for residential modern design.
So talk with us a little bit about that, as you said, going from a Google search to this position that you find yourself in the world of modernism. What exactly of a resource is it? Who utilizes it, and how do you accrue such a wealth and knowledge of information?
So our website, usmodernist.org, has three major sections. The first one is called the Masters Gallery, and it's basically every house, built and unbuilt, by all the architects you've ever heard of, all the famous ones, all the Frank Lloyd Wright houses, all the Charles Guathmy houses, John Lautner, Rudolph Schindler, etc. That's about 8,000 houses right there we've documented. So you can find out where they are, what happened to them, are they still standing, what kind of condition are they in, etc. The second section is our architecture magazine library, where we have scanned about 3.2 million pages of architecture magazines going back to the 1890s. And it's all now searchable by keyword, which is just incredible. So if your grandmother lived in a modernist house in 1954, you can go in and probably find it if it was published anywhere in the major magazines. And then thirdly, we have a very fun podcast called U.S. Modernist Radio, which has been on about 7 years. 180 shows, about 270 guests of people who are just into this from all over the world.
Now, obviously, this coming up is a historical preservation conference. Talk with us about that. Obviously, you've put together all the assets for folks to see all the examples, 3 million pages of magazines on modernism. Any threats, George, to modernist architecture out there? Here we are at 2021. Is that part and parcel with a little bit of your work to explain its piece in the overarching architectural and design history?
Well, the reason we have all this information available is primarily to keep modernist houses from being destroyed. They really are like livable sculpture, houses that are works of art that you can live in many cases. And they tend to look like the future. They don't tend to look like that Victorian house, which we think of as historical, or that old mill house, or that great brick structure down the road. It looks like something that with a little more paint and color could be something built next week. So it's hard for city councils and historical review boards to see these houses as historic, even though they are.
And has modernism ebbed and flowed, a lot of times, but generations just after might, think, oh, that might look dated. But there seems to be a retro fabulousness aspect to it. Has modernism always been at the forefront, or has it had its day and now it's maybe a resurrection?
Well, modernism has always been a niche. It's not been something that has taken the nation by storm. I tell people that just like NASCAR and sushi, modernism is really just something that you got to be into. But on the whole, it has grown quite a bit in the last 15 years. It's seen more of a renaissance. People are interested in saving the houses. People are buying modernist furniture for their Victorians or their Cape Cods because they just love the furniture. And there's such an interest in it that we have conferences like this.
Question for you, don't want to put you on the spot, but let's maybe take a Brutalism, for example. There's continuous debate on saving brutalist architecture, saying, some Boston City Hall, plenty of examples, a building torn down here. That seems to be slightly more controversial than modernism. Do you have any thoughts on, the saving or not of brutalist architecture?
Well, brutalism is basically modernism set to concrete. They're very heavy structures, very much sculptural in nature. Some of them worked in terms of being functional for the reason that they were built, and some of them didn't. Our position is it's not really reasonable to try to save every building that's in danger, but to save the best ones, the ones that have the best chance of being saved and restored. And principally, sometimes it's a matter of reuse. For instance, a building that is a police station that everybody hates could really be a great set of condos. So you have to look at it a variety of ways.
So I appreciate your coming here, giving us a little preview of the conference coming up in April. Of course, if you're watching, we'll provide those links, of course, and where you can see George. George, what are you looking forward to most with the conference?
Well, it's always fun to talk with people who are into preservation and into modernism. And what I want to help them do is get some of the tools so when they drive by that funky little house on their street, they'll know right away how to look it up and find out why it's important.
Well, it's going to be an exciting conference. Again, if you're watching, we'll provide those links. George Smart does have the keynote. He is the accidental archivist. And George, we very much appreciate your taking the time to Skype in to GoLocal Live, give folks a preview. We look forward to seeing you online in April.
All right, thanks, Kate.
Okay, thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back with more live this afternoon here in Providence. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel.